breaking story which is coming in regarding this. Times Now has literally set the news agenda after the kind of reportage that we've been getting for you. There's another shocker coming in from one of the topmost Gandhi Parivar loyalists. Listen in to once again to what exactly it is that Subodh Kant Sahay, he is someone who is a former minister of the UPA as well. This is what he has to say about the Prime Minister.
हिटलर का सारा इतिहास इसने पार कर लिया। हुडा साहब बड़े गांव की भाषा में समझा रहे थे। हिटलर ने भी ऐसा ही एक संस्था बनाया था, उसका नाम था खाकी। सेना के बीच में उसने बनाया था। मोदी हिटलर की राह चलेगा तो हिटलर की मौत मरेगा, ये याद रख लो मोदी।
Well, in fact, let me go across to Madhav. Madhav, we have been speaking to several of the former chief ministers of the BJP, senior-most leaders who've come out and said that the Congress's desperation is now showing. Bokhla gaye hai on the crackdown of the corruption as well as the popularity of the Prime Minister. Do you think that there is reason for the BJP to say that?
Well, that is the BJP's charge, and that is certainly BJP will very seriously object to these kind of statements that are coming in. In the past also, when there has been unacceptable language used against the Prime Minister, the BJP has very strongly defended the Prime Minister and has come out lashing out at Congress leaders who have used this kind of language in the past. So it is not an entirely new aspect, but you know, even as one criticizes the Prime Minister for any particular scheme, any particular governmental program, one must remember that you know, talking about that program is perhaps more important. If you are speaking out in the interest of the people, just trying to rouse passions by increasing hatred against the ruling dispensation or the Prime Minister, how much is that a desirable situation as a responsible political party and a political leader? In this particular case, as you were rightly mentioning, he's been a union cabinet minister. So clearly, of course, Subodh Kant Sahay would know very well the kind of impact and the meaning of these words. For someone of that stature to use these kind of words, saying dying a death such as Modi, such as Hitler would for the Prime Minister, end of the day, he is the Prime Minister of the nation. He's not just the Prime Minister who belongs to the BJP, he's as much the Prime Minister of all the citizens of this nation as well. So do these constitutional posts not require a basic degree or a modicum of respect is a question that certainly of course will come to mind. The BJP of course making its thoughts very clear on this issue, but we will have to see how the responses are that come in from other political parties and other opposition parties and whether they find these kind of words acceptable at all. Back to you.
Well, in fact, Nilashish, if I can quickly come to you, any kind of action which was taken against Sheikh Hussain, who last week had called for the Prime Minister's death to be like that of a dog, any kind of action, any kind of example that the Congress had set last week? Nilashish, well, it seems that we don't have that audio connection. Let me go across to Sanjay Jha, who's joining us, a political analyst. Sanjay Jha, your first reaction to what this time around a union minister, a former union minister of the Congress era had to say, saying that the Prime Minister ki maut marega.
You know, I do believe that we need to maintain a very civilized, graceful political discourse in India. I do understand that, you know, the Congress and BJP are each other's political opponents, but we are not enemies. We don't have to get bitter. It doesn't have to get venomous. It doesn't have to get so impertinent and rude. So I'm just going to request people not to use this kind of language. It's reprehensible, regrettable. Frankly, not just against the Prime Minister. Don't use it against anybody.
But do you find it surprising, Sanjay Jha, that this kind of a request, this kind of appeal is not coming from the top of the Congress? The Gandhis who tweet often, none of them have tweeted and warned their cadres, senior leaders, now even former union ministers, not to use language like this. What's acceptable, what is not?
You know, can I be very frank with you? You know, this is every political party, including the BJP, is guilty here. Let me give you one example. One of the ministers in Mr. Modi's government had abused Rahul Gandhi. In fact, it was such a vile and ugly language that it was an abuse basically, and you can't even repeat it. Nobody can even repeat that. And nobody condemned it. I mean, this is what I'm saying, that, you know, India's political culture has got so vitiated. And everybody is guilty. Let me tell you, across the board, bipartisan, everybody is guilty.
Across the political board, across the political ideologies, unfortunately, there is very little being done to clean up the language. The Lakshman Rekha constantly being breached. Thank you so much, Sanjay Jha. In fact, let me go back across to Neelashish. Neelashish, I was asking you last week when we had Sheikh Hussain, and that too in Maharashtra, which is where the Congress is in power. Any kind of action taken against Sheikh Hussain about the statement that he had made wishing the Prime Minister a dog's death?
Well, yes, you can see these kind of statements coming in from the Congress. Last week, of course, it was Sheikh Hussain. And let's not forget, when he made that statement, that very unparliamentary language that was used, he even was unabashed and brazen about it, saying, I might get a notice issued on this and it doesn't matter to me. So using these kinds of words, this kind of language, of course, not very becoming of the positions they hold. Today, of course, now you have a former union minister saying Hitler ki maut marega about the Prime Minister. Of course, clearly somewhere this kind of language needs to be condemned, but that is not coming in from the Congress party from any side. We have questioned leaders here at Jantar Mantar who are here protesting on various accounts. We have asked them questions about these irresponsible statements coming in, but there's absolutely no condemnation. There have been justifications regarding the Agniveer scheme, Agnipath scheme, and about the kind of words used with regard to that. But now you have these kinds of statements which in a way cross just the political discourse and leave a bad taste in the mouth. So of course these kinds of statements being endorsed in a way by Congress leaders, but no condemnation from the top brass.
Well, in fact, do stay on with us. Let our viewers decide. Is this acceptable language against the democratically elected Prime Minister of India? Listen in to what Subodh Kant Sahay had to say.
मुझे तो लगता है कि हिटलर का सारा इतिहास इसने पार कर लिया। हुडा साहब बड़े गांव की भाषा में समझा रहे थे। हिटलर ने भी ऐसा ही एक संस्था बनाया था, उसका नाम था खाकी। सेना के बीच में उसने बनाया था। मोदी हिटलर की राह चलेगा तो हिटलर की मौत मरेगा, ये याद रख लो मोदी।